Hello, my name is Sarah Bachman. I'm hearing. A while ago, a man inspired me to learn ASL. After that, I decided to go ahead and pursue a goal to become an ASL teacher and do my best to inspire other hearing people to learn sign. What happened was a deaf person approached me and let me know the deaf perspective of hearing ASL teachers. I was surprised, but I thought okay and decided to go ahead and make this documentary so I can inform other hearing people of that deaf perspective. I had a hard time finding an interpreter to help me interpret this film, so I went ahead and interpreted it myself. This message is a warning. Understand, I am not skilled, and I am not a certified interpreter. So I did my best to allow access to this information for deaf and hearing people both. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for watching. American Sign Language is a visual language used primarily by the deaf and hard of hearing communities in the United States and Canada. Although American Sign Language, ASL, has been around since 1817, it was not officially recognized as a real language until the 1960s. Since then, classes have been offered at hearing schools, but only a small percentage of people enrolled. Due to many states not accepting ASL as a foreign language, classes were rarely offered and consistently small. In recent years, ASL has become increasingly popular as more states accept ASL as foreign language credit. According to the Modern Language Association, from 1998 to 2009, ASL enrollment has increased by 478%. This increase in ASL enrollment is breaking communication barriers between the deaf and hearing worlds, as well as improving awareness of deaf culture and increasing job opportunities for ASL teachers. As ASL programs sprout up all over the U.S., hearing people who learned ASL in academic settings are stepping up to teach classes. This is causing distress in deaf communities all over the nation. In order to better grasp this distress, one must view the situation from a historical and a cultural lens. Before 1817, America had a sign language called Martha's Vineyard. It developed in a small village with the highest percentage of deaf people. So naturally, they developed their own language. It involved hearing people too. Another form of sign language in America was found in small houses around the country called home sign. It meant more like body language, expression, no words were used. There were a lot of pointing and mostly pictures. In that year, 1817, two men by the name of Gallaudet and Clerc brought something from France, an old French sign language. Brought it to America and set up the first school for the deaf. It was set up in Hartford, Connecticut. So they took students from Martha's Vineyard, from those who use home sign, taught them French Sign Language, and in 1817, all those together combined to make ASL. ASL is about 80% from French Sign Language, and the rest come from Martha's Vineyard and home sign. Those three combined to make ASL. After ASL was established in America as a form of communication to educate the deaf and hard of hearing, deaf schools began to pop up all over the nation. Deaf children flourished with access to information through the use of ASL. Deaf adults taught at these deaf schools, passing down their language and culture to future generations until the Milan Conference in 1880 changed everything.
The Milan Conference in 1880 really impacted ASL all over the world and even America. There was a man named Alexander Graham Bell. He was a hearing man, and he believed strongly that deaf people could be oral because he had a deaf family that grew up oral and didn't learn or use sign language. Really, he believed that ASL was not a real language, and so he disregarded it. He decided to go to a big, important event called the International Congress on Education for the Deaf. He went and presented to the Congress his beliefs. His beliefs were that deaf people could learn oral and didn't need to sign, and we should disregard it. The Congress believed his way and decided to announce that sign language should be illegal all over the world. It affected deaf schools in America as well, because all the deaf schools, the teachers that were deaf and worked there, all lost their jobs because they could not teach oral, because their sign language was illegal. So they replaced all the deaf teachers and started hiring more hearing.
With only hearing teachers at the deaf schools now, deaf children began focusing their energy on practicing to lip read and speak instead of learning math, English, science, and other academic subjects. Without access to these subjects, deaf children grew up working lower-level jobs in factories and farms that required little to no communication, and even those jobs were incredibly difficult to find. Deaf communities all over the nation struggled for decades to keep their precious language alive. They worked to gain ASL the national recognition that would provide the deaf access to an equal education and open more job opportunities for future deaf generations. Finally, in 1959, after almost a century, it came. ASL was finally recognized as a foreign language and even offered at hearing high schools and universities. The deaf would be able to keep their culture and language alive and have job opportunities teaching at hearing schools. But this was not the case. The deaf community was thrilled. Colleges, universities, high schools, they were all accepting ASL as a language and offering it. Hearing ASL students were taking classes and learning. The deaf people were so excited. They thought that there would be many job opportunities opening for only the deaf to teach ASL at those hearing schools. But when the ASL students got their degrees and graduated to start looking for jobs, they went ahead and started applying for and taking those jobs teaching ASL classes. The deaf perspective started to change. They previously thought that hearing people taking those classes would mean there would be counselors for the deaf, lawyers for the deaf, because hearing can really apply to any job because they have straight communication. They don't have to spend money on interpreters and everything. It was really nice for those hearing people. But the deaf perspective started to change when they realized that hearing were taking those jobs and deaf people were not able to work. Deaf people started to feel, they were struggling for jobs for years, but now they started to feel resentment. From a historical standpoint, deaf people have struggled to find work and face oppression when it comes to employment still to this day. Hearing people can get any job without facing discrimination based on their hearing status. Teaching ASL does not require the ability to hear. Therefore, discrimination based on hearing status becomes obsolete, making this job uniquely deaf-friendly. When searching for and applying to jobs teaching ASL, hearing ASL teachers should remain aware of the history of employment oppression felt by the deaf. So, deaf culture involves an aspect of shared experiences. Can you explain what those shared experiences are? Yeah, they're all the same. It's one thing that's always fascinated me from my perspective of studying it for many years and being immersed in the culture. I feel that deaf culture is one that's a little bit more special because our culture, it is seen in other countries as well. In China, Sweden, Russia, South America, all the experiences of that culture expressed by the deaf are all the same. It doesn't matter their language. It's all the same. It's something that's very special. It's about the shared experiences of oppression, the experiences of being put down, told you can't work or can't drive or won't be covered by insurance. It's all the same. Even at deaf schools all around the world, it's the same. All the hearing educators inventing languages like oral or cued speech, or sign English, all those different languages showing up to educate the deaf. Like schools here in Sweden, in Canada, all the deaf have that same experience. The collectivist nature of deaf culture was highly influenced by their shared experiences of oppression. These experiences are felt by deaf all over the world and keep the deaf community careful when accepting new members into their inner circle. If a person is born deaf, are they automatically accepted into the deaf community? From my perspective, if a baby is born deaf, they are automatically included, yes. The deaf world, the deaf community, they're accepted like that. It doesn't matter their background. If they grew up oral or have cochlear implants, whether they can sign or not, none of that matters, because they are the same as us. They are included instantly. If their attitude changes as they grow up, they can stay in the community or be excluded. If they grow up and they are against sign and feel like they are above the deaf because they are oral, then the community will exclude them. They won't be accepted anymore. They will be moved to the outer circle of the community. I have seen it happen. It depends on the deaf person's beliefs. If they share the same experiences and communication, then they can stay in the community forever. But if their beliefs and attitudes are different, then it means they are not included. Does it mean they are excluded 100%? No, because they will still always have that shared experience of being deaf. They will just be excluded from the inner circle. Deaf children are always accepted into the deaf community because they share the same experiences of oppression. If that deaf child grows into beliefs that don't match the community, they are excluded. So is the opposite true? Does a hearing person who grows to share the same beliefs as the deaf become accepted? No. A hearing person will never have the same shared understanding of oppression, of frustration, of trying to understand growing up in schools and being able to sign involved in community and culture, but still having the outside world not understand their experiences. It's impossible. So if a hearing person's like, oh yeah, I relate to deaf, no, they can't, but they can have a deaf heart. It's a new thing, a new idea that's just spread, this idea of deaf heart. That I think is possible. A hearing person can be immersed in the language and community and provide support and have a deaf heart. A hearing person can share the same beliefs and values as the deaf, have a deaf heart, but will always lack that cultural aspect of shared experiences. Therefore, they will never be able to understand the depth that is deaf culture. So, that hearing person that's never had those deaf experiences, do you think that person can teach about those experiences? My belief is no. Well, I'm on the fence. I have mixed feelings because A hearing person that teaches ASL, no, it's not their language, their culture. But at the same time, we have codas or awesome teachers like Elizabeth, who went to Gallaudet for 8 years at Gallaudet, married a deaf man, has a deaf son, is fluent. Wow, if she wants to teach, okay. But teaching the experience and the culture, I don't think it's possible. I think hearing people can teach about their perspective of the culture, what they studied about the culture, what deaf tend to do, like flick the lights or touch them to get their attention, that kind of thing. But the experiences, the feelings, the frustrations, I don't think they can teach that. Hearing people can bring in deaf presenters or show films or movies, different things they can to substitute for that experience, but does it have the same impact?
A hearing person who has never experienced these types of oppression is unable to bring that depth into an ASL classroom without outside assistance. When searching for and applying to jobs as an ASL teacher, a hearing person should remain aware of these limitations. In the end, there will always be hearing people teaching ASL. In order to show the proper respect for deaf culture, a hearing person applying for a job teaching ASL should make sure that there are no other qualified deaf people looking to teach in the area, be actively involved in the local deaf community, bring as much outside deaf experience into the classroom as possible, and stay open to the suggestions and opinions of the local deaf community. Thank you for watching.